Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr. Welcome to Cyber Monday. I know some of you are watching from your cubicle as you pound away to the one of your busiest holiday days of the season. And it's no wonder that the Biden administration is backing off of some of their mandates. We know that they got shut down in the courts quite a bit, but they released a memo. I don't know if they officially gave the word, but apparently they're letting it known that, hey, for federal employees, they're not forcing people to just lose their jobs right now. Probably because, one, you don't want a lot of angry people working for the government who suddenly get pushed off from their jobs because of COVID mandates, especially while people in the private sector now get to keep their jobs because they've been shut down in the courts time and time again. And they're going to continue to be shut down in the courts because Biden was pushing something that he knew was unconstitutional from the get-go. They said originally they didn't have the power to do all these mandates, but they pushed it anyway. And I think they will try to use the new variant and sensationalize it to keep pushing the need for it. We heard all kinds of things over the weekend about this is more dangerous to children, and at the same time where they're trying to get all your kids vaccinated. So I'm like, oh, that sounds suspicious. But apparently in South Africa, the people who discovered it are like, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. But of course, they want to shut down travel. Biden was asked if it's so kind of important, then why are you shutting down travel like on Monday instead of doing it like immediately, which he didn't have really an answer for that, because there's no answers to this other than they're just kind of winging it. They're just kind of winging it, and we're just kind of letting them do it. I know I titled this episode Fool Me Once. I was never fooled, but I know a lot of people out there were. But I always thought these lockdowns were a bad idea. And it was very clear, very evident from the get-go that they were not being honest after the 15 days to slow the spread. And I was very early on like, we should just, I think it's immoral to keep everyone locked down, to keep people from having their jobs, to pick winners and losers. Yeah, you gave some money to some businesses who lost out, but other people didn't get a dime. And that's still just us going into more debt and so on. Trump said very early on, we don't want the cure to be worse than the virus or worse than the disease. And we obviously got there very fast. And they keep trying to push it. So, and if you look at some of like court rulings, I'm sure they'll try to use the Omicron, which is so funny because they skipped over new variant and Xi variant in the Greek alphabet because they didn't want new to sound like, oh, it's just the new variant, I guess. And who also didn't want the Xi variant because it's XY. And they said, well, it's a very common name of, and it just so happens to be the name of the leader of China, not pronounced the same way, but spelled the same way. So that is why they skipped over 2 Greek letters in the alphabet to get what we have Omicron, which people think sounds like some kind of Decepticon, like, Optimus Prime or somebody about to go to battle. And maybe they're also like, ooh, that sounds scary and intimidating. Let's go with that. Let's go with that. But we're not going to have the same name or same letters as the leader from China, because we're in their back pocket. And so that's why it is what it is. But that's what they're pushing right now. That's what they're pushing right now. He says someone who comes up with these names, they seem sci-fi. They just do it off of like the Greek alphabet, I guess, but it's purely political. There's a political element to it, obviously, because there's a marketing aspect of it. So they didn't want to do the marketing route because they wanted to make sure that it wasn't too confusing. So they didn't want to call it the NU variant, the new variant, because they didn't want it to be like, oh, it's just a new variant. They wanted to have something with a distinguishable name, and they couldn't go to the next one because it was spelled XI, and XI, it's not pronounced the same way as the Chinese leader. Now, they didn't say that. They just said it's a common last name. But we know why the World Health Organization doesn't want the variant to sound like the name of the Chinese leader. So it's now it's like Omicron, like we're doing battles with the Decepticons and stuff. It sounds intimidating. It's probably very powerful. It's what they're probably going for. They're like, that's it. That's got to be the name. So now that's what they're pushing. And I'm sure in court cases where you have maybe some justices or judges or whatever that are more left leaning, they'll try to be like, well, there's no new variants and we don't know the information, so maybe that's why we have to ignore the law and give more power to the government. But it doesn't. That's not how it's supposed to work. Just look at the law. The role of the government is actually, they're supposed to protect our rights. That's like the role, actually. That's the actual role of the government is to ensure and protect our rights, our God-given rights. And if you have to do something with their health purposes or something that does kind of like supersede, you have to do it like in the least invasive sort of way. So they've really gone outside of the scope of what they're supposed to have done this whole entire time. And we'd be foolish if we just keep allowing them to just keep on keeping on. I can't believe that there's so many people still willing to be such sheeple, knowing that people like President Biden, there's a video of him. He went shopping in Nantucket. He stayed with like a big donor, a friend of his, during Thanksgiving, while people were paying for very expensive turkey and stuff, highest cost for Thanksgiving people have ever seen. But he's hanging out with his donor, and that's his prerogative or whatever. It's just, a little off message, but they don't care. They don't care about you. So anyway, he went shopping, clearly in a place that had a sign that said you have to be masked. Wasn't wearing a mask, people could see. And actually they did confront him about it. Of course, the Fox News Peter Doocy confronted them about it, and he was like, Jen's just like, of course you want to wear a mask and do our best, and we're saving lives and so on, and just kind of spins it.
Is there concern that when the president says today, please wear your mask indoors in public settings around other people, and he doesn't do that it's going to make it harder to get people to follow him?
I think you see the American people, and all of you see the president wearing a mask every time he comes out to an event, when he's sitting in meetings, and certainly he will continue to model behavior he hopes the American people will follow, not for his benefit, but to save their own lives and the lives of their friends and neighbors.
We're just saving your life. We're just saving your life while wearing the mask. Of course, he doesn't do it consistently because he's not scared, which you shouldn't be scared. No one should be scared. But he's doing it for you because he loves you so much. Please. There's a video of him going up to talk to reporters. He's wearing a mask. Then he takes off his mask to address the people. So around non-people, he's masked. Comes up, takes off his mask, and he like coughs in his hand. He's like notorious for like coughing in his hand. It happens quite a bit. It's really gross. Like you can I've taught like my nephew and my nieces are very small. My nephew's 6. The baby just turned 3, and then the other one's 4, and it's like, hey, we taught them to not cough in their hands. Why can't we teach Joe Biden? Is that something that he's forgotten with dementia? I do not know, but we can reteach this skill, hopefully, and maybe he won't have a 50 first dates and keep forgetting every day. I don't know, but it's gross. There's videos videos of Joe Biden. He will pull down his mask, like on the campaign trail. He pull down his mask, cough on it in his hand, and then pull up his mask again. And if you haven't seen it, it's happened more than once. It's happened more than once. So these are the people leading, all these decisions for our health that actually do not care about COVID. And granted, they're not scared. They're living their life. They're just playing a game with you. And kudos to them for just kind of living their life, I guess. But the point is that they're trying to enforce all of these rules and keep you deathly afraid. And that's why they're pushing new variants. And they haven't said that we're going to have lockdowns, and we're sure we're going to have lockdowns, but they keep hyping up cases rather than hospitalizations, because it's how they freak you out. That's how they freak you out. And I think they're really gonna try to use this to some degree to get your kids vaccinated, continue doing that, because that's where we're pushing now. Biden is also talking about people needing to get boosters as well. So that's their new big thing. But in South Africa, though, they know that it's really not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. At least that's what they're saying. So they're going to, talking about closing down travel. When Trump did that, he was, xenophobic, according to Joe Biden. But when Biden does it, it's just them doing their job, which at this point, they can't guarantee that's already not in the country. It's pretty inevitable that it'll be here. But at the same time, there isn't data that this is going to be any more dangerous than what we have with Delta and so on. So that's their new thing. And Biden goes around and shops maskless, but expects you to freak out about it. They won't call it, they skipping over letters in the Greek alphabet so they can call it this intimidating thing, and doesn't want to remind you that came from China. Oh gosh, did you guys see? Well, before I jump into it, Fauci did some interviews over the weekend, and he is just so arrogant. It's amazing that people keep having this man come on TV. I think this was a big mistake with Trump not getting rid of him, but people are like, oh, but there would have been so much blowback. Well, hindsight's 2020, and I have it. So we all have it. Obviously, he should have got rid of this man. Like, I understand like the politics, and it wasn't even like the media was like really trying to ratchet up division between them, the two of them. But obviously, Fauci was always a political actor, and he was someone who's like championed. He's not just involved with like gain of function research. He was someone who championed it, and now he's trying to change the definition so he doesn't get slammed with being supportive of gain of function research. This isn't just a thing that happened in China. That's stuff that we funded with U.S. dollars that went to this, and Fauci and his organization, they're part of it. And so Fauci should be held responsible, but it is amazing that so many people in the press still hold him with such high regard. Was it Disney that just put out a documentary on him? I don't know if it was, maybe it's Disney Plus. There was some big Fauci documentary or something about him, and he's so great. There's this trend on TikTok where conservatives are mocking liberals, and they'll have the headline, liberals listening to Dr. Fauci, and they're playing the song, "Our God is an awesome God, He reigns." I haven't done that because I still think that's a little too creepy and sacrilegious to, even though you're mocking them, I'm like, that's a song I sing to my Lord in church, so I'm not about to do that with Fauci, even though I'm mocking them. But I get the sentiment. Like, people are buying the Fauci candles and Fauci murals and all this other kind of stuff. They're like, listen to Fauci, and Fauci believes his own hype. He absolutely believes his own hype now. So I'm going to play you 2 clips from Face the Nation. He's got all kinds of other weird clips, but these 2 just like blew me away. But before I do that, I did get pretty deep into the weeds before I even encourage you all to please go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have on the website. Please check out different merchandise that I have. Especially you guys are all buying stuff online already, right? Monday. We got Black Tea News cups and mugs and stuff. We got Constitution's Glorious Liberty document. We got You Are Not Those Special mugs. Aren't you so cute? We got them in shirts. We got the My Money, My Business shirt. We got the pumpkin spice season. We got those on shirts as well. We got the goat hoodies. We got these in different colors, so please check those out. If you want to support Black Teen News, a good way to do that is to buy something. But, also please consider going to blackteennews.com/donate and leaving a gift there as well. And also, for those of you who do not know, I also write books myself, and you can also find the links. My website for my books is ninjadoespublishing.com, but you can find a link also on blackteennews.com for this stuff. So please check out all my books as well, especially if you got kids in your life who are looking for a good chapter book. Super Kid is really good. I have been told on good authority that it is epic. I know someone, a fan of the show, Black Teen News, told me that they got the book for their daughter. Shout out to Clint. And they said that their daughter thought it was really, really good. So I got good reviews. I appreciate you guys supporting. I actually wrote the story based off stories about my dad. So I do love my books, but this one does have like a personal touch as well. So I thank you guys for your support, and I appreciate you. And also I do want to give a shout out to Brighter Michigan Pack. I am in their studio today. As always, if I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. They're not my boss. I just appreciate the space and the opportunity to be here. God bless them. And let's get back to crazy Mr. Fauci. So Mr. Fauci was on Face the Nation, and they were talking about how there's Republicans that want to hold him accountable for his gain-of-function research in the role that he played in it. And Fauci keeps trying to, he did like perjure himself, but he keeps trying to like change the definition of gain-of-function research to be like, I ain't it. It's not me. And so the media, of course, is playing along with it. So you have his arch nemesis in Rand Paul. God bless Senator Rand Paul. Absolutely, God bless him. But Ted Cruz has also been on it too. So this is Fauci.
Senator Cruz told the Attorney General you should be prosecuted.
Yeah. I have to laugh at that. I should be prosecuted. What happened on January 6th, Senator?
Do you think that this is about making you a scapegoat to deflect from President Trump?
Of course. You have to be asleep not to figure that one out.
Well, there are a lot of Republican senators taking aim at this. I mean,
that's okay. I'm just going to do my job. And I'm going to be saving lives, and they're going to be lying.
I'm doing my job, and they're going to be lying. That was so insincere and so fake. Even like the laugh, like, was that like a genuine? No, I don't think so. I don't think it came off as a genuine laugh. I mean, he's in the wrong, but I think at this point, like, people get so offended when you even call them out on their garbage. And he knows he ought to be in trouble, but he's a scientist, sure, but he's also a bureaucrat and been a bureaucrat for a long time. And I don't think in 2021, but when it was 2019, he was the highest paid federal employee. And I'm sure he, besides that, it keeps continuing on. He's still, on the payroll, person that they called, even though he's been on record changing his mind so much, on record purposely lying to the American people over things he thought were worth lying about. But that's not someone that you trot out as a figure of public trust. But I guess you do when you actually don't care about the public. So what about January 6th? What does that have to do with anything? What does that have? These people will not allow you to hold them accountable. They will not allow you. They keep shifting goalposts. They distract you. And so what does he think should happen to Ted Cruz because of January 6th? What does he think should happen to Ted Cruz? And what is his place to even say that as someone who's just a public health figure? What who's supposed to be there representing the U.S. government to alleviate the fears and the burdens of the coronavirus and so on? That's why he's out there doing these conversations. So why would you even throw that out there? What about January 6th? That is so political. That is so beyond the scope of what he's supposed to do. But in the Biden administration, when you're on the team, you could just throw all that civility sort of out the window, out the door, and just be who you are. that mask was like totally lifted off. And it was evident when Trump was no longer the president. He's like, oh yeah, science is back. That's how they all thought. But science is a process. It's not a cult. It's not a religion. People try to paint it that way. And now Fauci like is science. He is science. And here's proof of that.
Anybody who's looking at this carefully realizes that there's a distinct anti-science flavor to this. So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science because I represent science. That's dangerous. To me, that's more dangerous than the slings and the arrows that get thrown at me. And if you damage science, you are doing something very detrimental to society long after I leave.
You attack me. Damaging science is the most important thing. Like, dude, okay, a prolific lie, which, by the way, I don't think this was a lie. But he came and said something different. So at the beginning, he was like, people don't have to wear masks, right? That's what he said. People kept quoting it after the fact, even though when he came back and said you should wear masks, he was saying don't wear masks. And I do actually think that's his true position, because prior to there being a pandemic in like 2020, he was on an interview and people asked like, what would happen if there was some kind of outbreak? Would you wear masks and stuff? He's like, no, just eat right, diet, exercise, don't drink too much, like those were the solutions, like not masking and all this other kind of stuff, not lockdowns, not being in fear. Before everything got so political with the pandemic, it was, treat your body right. Like that was his advice for like an outbreak, a pandemic. So anyway, he said, don't mask. That was his original thought process, original advice. We don't have to wear masks right now. It's not a big deal. It's not gonna really offer you protection. It might help when there's a few droplets. Like that. That was his position. And then all of a sudden it was, no, we need you to mask. We need you to mask. And so people started masking, and some people are like, but Fauci, you said this not too long ago. And it's like, well, they're like, the science changes. The science changes. Did the science really change about it? The masking? Or did your political agenda change? What changed so much that this virus is so much different than every other virus? That these masks, especially cloth ones and stuff, what's so different now that you didn't know as a virologist before? What's so different now, Fauci? Did the science change, or did you change? Did your understanding change? Because you could be wrong, because science is a process. It's not a religion. It's not like a stone tablet like God came from, on the Mount Sinai and said, this is the science. That's not what happens with science. Science is a process. So maybe you got something wrong, but I don't actually think you got something wrong. I think your politics just shifted a bit. So then they came out and said, well, the reason why we said not to wear masks is because we wanted medical workers we needed to make sure that they had the supplies that they needed. Oh, okay. I don't trust much of anything what you say at this point. But if that is the case, you decided to play God with people's lives. You decided to lie to the public and say you do not need work. If you thought it's so important now for the people wear masks, but you decided to lie to the general public and say don't wear masks, not go make your own mask. You said don't wear masks because you didn't want them to buy up all the masks from the medical people who needed it. So you decided that people who aren't medical professionals could be volunteered as tribute. They were sacrificial lambs, that their lives were less valuable. So it was worth risking their lives and being dishonest to them. It's saying don't wear a mask. So they go out there and be like, we don't have to wear a mask, and have this feeling linger between people because they still felt that after you said, hey, you should wear a mask. But you've indoctrinated them with this you don't have to wear a mask mentality, and you allegedly did it to protect medical workers, but now they have to be in more contact with people who won't wear masks because you told them not to wear masks. And you could have easily said, hey, let me level with you. We really need these particular masks for these medical people, And if you could make yourself a mask, a cloth mask, maybe send them masks, like any kind of protection we think will help. But please do not buy these expensive medical masks or these, don't buy up all these medical masks, because we need these health workers to have it. But that's not what they did. Fauci lied and said, you don't need to wear a mask. So after that big lie, why would you still have Fauci go on TV and being the face that people trust? And to people who still trust him and will hang on his word, or maybe you don't anymore, but for the people who still would after that point, why did you do it? Why did you do this? Because this man let you know he was willing to lie to you. And they also kept moving the goalpost with how many people need to be vaccinated as well. And they shifted the goalposts, and he would even admit, like, well, now I think we can get to this number, but they wouldn't before. So we had to tell them this number. Now I think we can get here. So he would continuously evolve on his positions, not because the science so much changed, but because, I don't know, political motivations. He's been in the game a long time. I'm not saying he's not a scientist, but people involved in bureaucracy are still involved in bureaucracy. Wasn't it those like the villains of like Futurama? I haven't watched the show in a long time, but I remember that being like a big thing, a big deal when the bureaucrats got involved. Bloated overreach. He's just a politician. And him saying what happened on January 6th. Sir, do you think Ted Cruz, when he's grilling you in front of all the other senators, you think he should be in jail? For what? For saying let's hold off the vote maybe for a few days to see if there's any discrepancies? A lot of people disagreed with him. That's not but you think this man should be in jail? You think he incited a riot? Is that what you're implying, Fauci? And he said in the second clip, and even before they got to that point, when you start being political, when lives are on the line, that's dangerous. So why'd you bring up January 6th? Why'd you do that, Mr. Fauci? So I think he's going to be on Joy Reid tonight, which you guys know I can't stand that woman, because he's just a clown. He's like, I'm here representing the science. When you attack me, you attack science. People can't attack science. Why can't we attack the science? Well, we're not attacking the science. We're maybe attacking the data that you guys present, but sometimes you guys are wrong. Sometimes you present it in dishonest ways. People mad at Joe Rogan because he basically survived COVID. They're like, oh, he's taking horse dewormer. No, he took some people, as in his words, but I won't say them exactly because he cursed and I won't. He said, I can afford people medicine, you bleepity bleeps. But they keep calling it horse dewormer. And they were upset, Tim Pool had the same treatment that Joe Rogan did. And Joe Rogan paid for the staff and stuff. They act like it was a big scandal. Because they want people to be scared out their mind, and they want people to take the vaccine. They don't want them to recover with monoclonal antibodies and stuff. And even if you're in a red state and you're having people vaccinated, remember when DeSantis was getting all the elderly vaccinated? They're like, oh, these are his donors. Yeah, there's a lot of elderly Republican voters. Yeah, sure. They still need the vaccine. What do you mean? But people wanted to go after DeSantis so tough, and now he has the lowest numbers, and in Michigan, where I'm at, they have the highest numbers. But Whitmer is their darling, and they hated Ron DeSantis. They really had to bring Ron DeSantis down because he was the bad governor, and they wanted to bring up Cuomo. People said they were Cuomo sexuals because that was the sort of energy that they thought that they needed, because he was the example. He was the anti-Trump, right? And now you had to get the goofball kicked out of office, really because of the nursing home scandal. but y'all didn't want to admit that, so y'all found another scandal. Which he's gross. He's gross. For sure. His brother right now is trending because some text messages were released or something about the time when his brother was still in office consulting about trying to fix the PR crisis, which he was having his brother on air, you know, at different points of time. It just wasn't good professionalism from CNN. So that's a little news of the day. But they play politics with the coronavirus the whole entire time. So Fauci acting like he's above it all, and the people who are trying to hold him accountable for gain of function research, the sort of arrogant behavior, this sort of arrogance that you see with Fauci, is it hard to believe that people could engineer a virus in a lab and be like, we're going to make it dangerous and make it so that it can attach to like people so we can then create the cure. And maybe there's some, I don't know, altruistic sort of good goal in mind there, but obviously it was too dangerous to do that kind of stuff because it can get leaked all the time. It can get leaked all the time. It could be a bioweapon. Accidentally, maliciously, whatever. But that sort of arrogancy to play God, that I represent the science. They can't attack science, so they attack me because it's easier to do that. Well, I'm sorry, the citizens of Science Town didn't elect you to be the representative of science, Mr. Fauci. But that arrogance that he has, you can see how we got to where we got. I do want to point out this comment. I thought this was really good. I hope you don't mind me sharing. Someone said, every morning I have myself a hot cup of black tea. It's called Morning Thunder. With you, I have black tea twice a day now. Ah, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Black Thunder. Sounds good. So, but also I wanted to point out that Australia has become a crazy place, and it has been a crazy place. And I wanted to share this on the last episode, but I got, there's so much kind of to talk about before the Thanksgiving, which I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. I had a good Thanksgiving. You know, there's so many people who make jokes about like, oh, I'm going, you know, don't talk about politics with family and other stuff like that. And then they show like a picture of like them be turning to Ben Shapiro or something like that. And people wincing. And there was someone on TikTok, it was a young black woman. She was like talking about how people were talking about how high the gas prices are. And she was just like holding their tongue, even though I think maybe she just said something about that. Cause I'm like, gas prices were high the last time Biden was in office, and now they're high again. You think you don't find that suspicious? Of course it's suspicious. So I probably would have said something. And I don't know how much drama I would maybe get into relatives on Thanksgiving over politics, because I have a particular uncle. I don't like to go that far with him on politics because he can get really emotional. And some people in a way bigger age bracket than you, they find it, I don't know, particularly disrespectful when you come at them anyway. And I know far more about politics than he does. And I don't, there are times where I'm just kind of like respectfully, I'm going to bow out because I don't want you to take me there because I can get real disrespectful. So there are definitely times when I hold my tongue, but in my immediate family circle, I don't have to really do that. Like everyone's pretty much on the same page as far as like, I mean, religion is the most important thing to the family, and you know, we're all on the same page as like far as politics. So I really I'm on the more peaceful end when I have a holiday. There's like cousins and so on that feel differently about things, and we might get into conversations, but there's only so many other things we can talk about. So it's not really something that I anticipate having an issue with. So I'm grateful in that manner. I know a lot of people out there don't have that same experience, but I'm glad that I do. I guess I argue enough with people online, so I don't need to do that with my family. People actually like advocate me, like they'll tag me hoping that I will argue with people. And I'm like, I do that like too much for you just to be like tagging me random on Facebook to fight with your friends. I saw someone on Sunday, like, I tried to hire you, which they were not offering to pay me. So that was just a joke. Like, but you wouldn't take the job. I'm like, I'm not. Too many people on Facebook. Some of these people might be legitimately crazy. And that's that I don't want to argue with about politics. I'm not going to get through it because I don't want to spend all day arguing with people, especially I don't know. So they can come watch Black Tea and get a dose, but I'm not about to like kung fu everybody. But I'd had a nice holiday. I hope you guys had a nice holiday. I spent a lot of it writing, working on some of my books. So I'm not much of a talker, so I ate my food, talked a little bit, and went off on my own and got on my computer. I'm very introverted. I know that may seem strange to you guys, but I'm extraordinarily introverted. So I just started working on another book, which I've written more than 30, by the way, if you did not know, and I have 14 published, if you did not know. But anyway, Australia is a crazy place. We didn't get to talk about it, and they're I'm really disappointed because I guess in my mind or people's minds, they think about these, I don't know, hunky people in the outback doing just like loving nature and being rough and, fighting giant spiders and kangaroos. I don't know, like, but just to hear how much they freak out about, like, they'll have like 3 cases and be like, we got to shut the whole place down. And now they're to the point they've had like these zones where they have people go in, and Tim Pool has called them concentration camps. Not like obviously like he says it to be like sensational, and people have actually mocked Tim Pool and had people were like taking pictures of themselves while in lockdown. But there's some people. It's nice that some people see it as a vacation and are chilling in their bikinis and whatnot because they cannot leave their home. But there's some people who would like to leave their home to get food and other things like that. So it's nice that you're having a good lockdown and you're enjoying it, but there's other people who are quite upset by it. So people were really mad at Tim Pool. And again, he says it to be a little sensational. But the government should not be telling you that you cannot leave your house. It's pretty bad there, and I'm glad that America. I don't think we could get this quite this bad. I mean, there were times when our governor here in Michigan said you cannot have people in your house, and she was saying that you cannot travel to your house because there's people who would like live in my area and maybe go like have a house like up north or something. It's very common. Maybe not very common, but not like so out of the ordinary. So they were telling people they couldn't go to their different houses and residences, and so people just like readily ignored that. And there are plenty of police, people who are like, I'm not chasing every dumb COVID restriction thing that you have. So there was definitely people who had the lockdown suck for. But there's plenty of people who just didn't comply with the stuff, and then there are people who would not carry out the execution of those. They're not even laws, mandates. But so I don't think America could get as bad as Australia is, at least not immediately. But if COVID was actually a little bit worse than what it was and was deadlier than what it is, I don't know, maybe, because I'm surprised about how many people are just kind of sheeple. But Australia's been weird.
As you know, last night we took urgent action to escalate our response in these communities, immediately implementing a hard lockdown. That means residents of Binjari and Rockall no longer have the 5 reasons to leave their home. They can only leave for medical treatment in an emergency or if required by law. It's highly likely that more residents will be transferred to Howard Springs today, either as positive cases or close contacts. We've already identified 38 close contacts in Binjari, and that number will go up. Those 38 are being transferred now. I contacted the Prime Minister last night. We are grateful for the support of about 20 ADF personnel as well as army trucks to assist with the transfer of positive cases and close contacts and to support the communities.
So they got like their military transporting people to these camps. And they're there and people are eventually allowed to leave them, so where they're not going off to like a gas chamber to die. But it's still pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy that they're not allowing people to leave their homes. And so I was talking to my parents about this yesterday, about just how crazy it got in Australia. And my mom's just like, well, what happens if they don't have food? I'm just like, I guess they should have had it, I guess, is their thinking. Because before, I think they would let you leave to get food, but in some of these zones they won't even let you do that. So it's pretty crazy. And here's a little rant about anti-mandate people.
If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is. If you support, champion, give a green light, give comfort to, support anybody who argues against the vaccine, you are an anti-vaxxer. Absolutely. Your personal vaccination status is utterly irrelevant. If you campaign against the mandate, if you campaign against people being vaccinated in vulnerable settings, teachers in classrooms, I'll be really clear, at that point in time, people were actually supporting the idea of a teacher being unvaccinated in a remote community classroom with kids who cannot be vaccinated. I reject that utterly, and I still reject it. And if you are out there in any way, shape or form campaigning against this mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. If you say pro-persuasion, stuff it, shove it. We are absolutely going to make sure as many Territorians as possible are vaccinated. That is our best protection against this thing. And if you look at the Doherty modelling that's only come out since, that says if you double dose 80 in remote communities, 5 and up, I think you'll see our vaccine mandate is absolutely crucial to protecting lives, particularly Aboriginal lives. And I will never back away from supporting vaccines. And anyone out there who comes for the mandate, you are anti-vax.
Whew. It's like, anti-persuasion, dude. So he rejects people who are like, maybe we should still just talk it out. No, they are for mandate, but there's a lot of people who feel that way. There's a lot of people who feel that way in America who are pushing for the mandate. And if at first you had Nancy Pelosi and Biden, all these people saying we cannot force people to do that. That's not our job, and like legally we can't even do it. But they changed their minds. They absolutely changed their minds, and they're going to continuously push the mandate. I'm already hearing about people saying that they plan on sending out mail-in ballots for people, kind of what they did with 2020, doing 2022. So I think, and I think that's really their best strategy for trying to win in 2022. Not because I'm saying the mail system will be full of fraud or anything like that. That's not even what I'm saying, but people have to realize that there are one of the big things in 2020 is that there were so many people who were incentivized to vote who wouldn't normally bother to do it. And you had people like Michelle Obama saying, get your ballot, turn it in, get your ballot, turn it in right now, get it. And it's like, you don't want to wait for debates. You don't want to hear any like October surprises. You don't want anything like that. You don't want to have like, don't you want to hear where Joe Biden stands on like packing the courts or any, like, you don't, like, we can't wait to get this information. You want us to take it, turn it in, like, and after the second debate, it was trending. How can I change my vote? And you could in some places, but that was pretty much too late for a lot of people at that point. Which just goes to show you that you really should not vote before election day. And after they had the Ginsburg had passed, they're like, well, Trump shouldn't fill in the seat because people have already voted. And it's like, well, whose fault is that? Election day hasn't happened yet. And even if it had happened, he'd still be the president until Joe Biden come and sworn anyway. It's still his like duty to do that. But people shouldn't be voting up like all early and stuff like that and then complain like, well, people have already cast their ballots. That's a decision that you chose to do. So they were really trying to, at that point, get people to turn in their ballots before people change their minds. And then there's people who wouldn't normally even bother to do it if it's even like raining or something. Some people go out and vote and they're like, it's my civic duty, I gotta vote. And there's some people who just could not be bothered. In Michigan, we had in 2018 we instituted that you could do like same day registration and then vote. And then our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, at a picnic, which they didn't know I was a Republican, but she mentioned at the picnic that the people who mostly did that were people 30 and under. And so I'm like, well, if it's a bunch of young people who were like, oh, on election day decided, okay, I'm going to register to vote and then vote. How many of those people do you think were informed voters? Democrats just care about raw numbers because they have mainstream media, they have celebrities, they have Hollywood, they have all these outlets to indoctrinate people, including all these huge accounts on TikToks with these dumb activist kids who don't know a darn thing, but they have like hundreds of thousands of followers. Even some of them have millions, and they will vote how they are told. They don't think too deeply on it, and they'll pump out what, I don't know, what Miley Cyrus or Billie Eilish or whatever tells them to, and then they'll turn in their ballot. And so Democrats are always like, oh, look how many people participate in democracy. They'll tell you that people are being, that voter suppression is a thing, at the same time bragging about how many people have voted, and they think it's a big duty, and we've achieved this big moral good. But I think it would be better if we actually had informed voters. And I think if you're not informed, I think you probably shouldn't vote. That's my opinion. Now, people on the left might be like, oh my gosh, she said people shouldn't vote. It's your right to vote. Yeah, sure, you can do that. But I think if you're not informed, then you probably shouldn't vote. I think you probably shouldn't vote if you're not informed, if you don't know the issues. If you think that, if you're mad at Trump because kids are separated on the border, and when he mentions coyotes are the reason why they're separated because they didn't come with their families, and you think that he meant animal coyotes, you probably shouldn't vote. But I know you did. I know you did. I know you did. But you probably shouldn't vote. That's my opinion. So anyway, they'll try the mail-in push again if they can. And when that kind of stuff happens, election day starts earlier. And it can be really hard for smaller offices with people with less money running to have election day moved up so high. And then it really becomes, politics becomes a game for the upper class and the elites. When elections get more expensive, it leaves out a lot of little guys who are trying their hardest to just make a difference. So everything that the Democrats usually try to stand for, they just really, really screw up. They really screw up. So we'll see how much they push the variants and stuff to try to advance their goals. I'm sure they're already trying to scare people about kids. But again, in South Africa, they already said it's not that big of a deal.
Looking at the mildness of the symptoms that we are seeing, currently there's no reason for panicking, as we don't see severely ill patients. I also checked with the hospitals, some of the hospitals in my area, and one of the biggest hospitals, they only have one patient currently that's COVID positive on a ventilator, and they don't even know whether it's COVID, it's Delta, or whether it is Omicron related. We acknowledge that it might change going forward. But the hype that's been created currently out there in the media and worldwide doesn't correlate with the clinical picture. And it doesn't warrant to just cut us off from any traveling and ban South Africa as if we are the villains in the whole process. It should not be like that.
Yep. So that's the actual news from South Africa. So while people are freaking out about this new variant, trying to get your kids to take the jab because they're like, oh, this one's could be the next thing that's so dangerous for your kids. There's it could change, but that's not the evidence right now. That's not the evidence right now. That's not the evidence right now. On another news front, we have the trial that started today for Epstein's little mistress friend, who's his accomplice. Hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself. So Miss Maxine, her case is a federal case, so can't watch it live. It's not being streamed anywhere. I think certain things are going to be gagged because they feel that it's too salacious. I think we should know everything. Epstein has been around for a long time. People known about the crazy stuff he's done for years. There were stories when his story started to break. People were already working on it, but you had muzzle orders and stuff. But there's a lot of people implicated. There's a lot of people it's tied to. I want as many people who are tied to this stuff to go down as possible. And I want to see how deep. I think I want to see how deep everything goes. I'm sure everyone would be horrified if we all knew the full truth of how many people that we connect to in sort of entertainment and life and politics that are connected to this man. Do you guys remember this from ABC of this leak that Project Veritas put out?
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
The creepy thing is that we would make access to all of these high.
Yeah. So just a little reminder of people have known about this stuff for a while. It's gone back for a long time. Feds knew about the stuff too. For those, I wish I had a picture of it, but they did find a picture of Bill Clinton, and it's a portrait, so he may or may not have posed for it, in a blue dress and his legs are crossed and he's pointing. It's so creepy. It's so creepy. But the thing about the fact that they still had Bill Clinton talk at the DNC convention, the presidential DNC convention, they still had Bill Clinton get up and talk. What would it have cost them to not have him say a darn thing? What would it have cost them to do that? But they just hate you enough that to not care about any sort of accountability, that they could still have been Bill Clinton up there with his whole old raggedy butt with his wife talking, even though they had pictures of him with one of Jeffrey Epstein's slaves. So what is up with the Democrat Party, and what is with people who allow them to get away with that stuff? Still having Bill Clinton up there at the DNC convention. And then complaining about how terrible Trump is. Everybody complained about how immoral, terrible Trump is. When they had Bill Clinton, they did not need to have him up there. They could have been like, nah, bro, not this year. But they did. Because they have so little respect for you. So little respect. So that trial is going on now. There's not a lot of details coming out as it's going. Like I said, it's not something we can watch on TV like we did with the Rittenhouse trial. But it's something that I'm going to try to, as info comes out, let you guys know about. I'm definitely going to be following it this week. Also, other things going on. Jessie Smollett is also going to trial. It's been 3 years. 3 years with Jessie Smollett when he first did that hate crime hoax. And he's just now going to trial for it. Now, of course, he tried to get out of it. But that he wasted a lot of manpower and resources on this hoax. So I'm glad that he's being held accountable for his silliness. We'll see if he's like held accountable. Like obviously he couldn't get it dismissed before. But I did like post on social media just a flashback of Kamala Harris, something that she said about him. So I'm gonna show that again. But I also found one with Rashida Tlaib. Rashida Tlaib is one of the congresswomen from Michigan. When one of the most famous Black and gay men from America is not safe, the message is clearer than ever has been. The dangerous lies spewing from the right wing is killing and hurting our people. Thinking of you, Jessie Smollett, and my LGBTQ neighbors. And Kamala Harris, Jessie Smollett is one of the kindest, most gentle human beings I know. I'm praying for his quick recovery. This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or color of their skin. We must confront this hate. And of course it didn't happen. Now, Rashida Tlaib, I don't know. she's a bit of a crazy person. Kamala Harris is not a dumb woman. She should have known the story was garbage. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people who thought it was true when it happened. I'm sorry that you were that gullible. I can't be nice to you about it at all. I just can't. It never made sense. And there's people who aren't like, casual viewers of politics or something. They probably heard something and it got amplified on social media. Like, oh my gosh, it's awful. Like I can forgive that too, I guess, but you were still gullible too. But Kamala Harris isn't dumb. Like the story always sounded ridiculous. Remember, that was like the polar vortex time in Chicago. It's cold. It's way colder than normal. He like walked to like Subway or something and allegedly got lynched by Trump supporters in Chicago wearing MAGA hats. So if the story wasn't weird before, if it wasn't fishy before, at that point, like, I don't know about that. I went to a convention one time, and this is actually a pretty funny story, but someone came up to my table because I was selling some of my books, and they were very, very flaming, I guess we'll say, like sparkling and everything. And so they just knew I was Black and was selling books that I wrote. And so they're like, oh my gosh, like, this is really great. And he, just from knowing I'm a Black person who wrote my own books, he asked me if I was queer. I said, no, I'm not queer. And I'm like, I'm very straight. I'm pretty sure I said super straight before that was like a thing. And then he's like, well, you don't have to be, gay to not be queer. And I was like, no, I'm not queer. And so he said, well, we're having this event and we're having other Black, entrepreneurs and stuff there. And maybe you'd like to be a speaker. Now, he knows nothing about me other than I am Black and I have produced a product. And he's already invited me to speak somewhere. This is amazing. So, and then he starts going on about this organization that he's allegedly with. And he starts saying, like, we were part of the group that ran Trump out of town or something. Because I guess Trump was going to do a rally and they didn't end up doing it. And I remember that being like a thing or something. And so just FYI, this is like the attitudes of people in Chicago. So that's why I mentioned it, because just to believe that some people in the MAGA hats just jumped Jessie Smollett in a polar vortex was always crazy. It always sounded stupid. But I'll go on and finish my story. So he goes on for a while, and not knowing that I'm as conservative as I get. I mean, super hard R. So I'm just kind of smiling, listening along. My sister's there, just watching it all go down. And so he starts talking about the patriarchy and fighting the patriarchy and how women are oppressed and blah, blah, blah. And Black people's oppressed and women, blah, blah, blah. And so after he goes on for a while, I'm just like, you know what? I don't really feel like I'm oppressed. And then he was like, he was so offended. And then he's like, you know what? The patriarchy is real and you are oppressed and they are blah, blah, blah. And so I have this man, I don't care how gay you are still a man. You are still mansplaining to me about how I'm oppressed as a Black woman, as I'm here doing my thing, trying to make a buck, selling a book, and you're just eating up my time because you're not buying anything. But he's telling me how I'm oppressed, and then he won't even let me get a word in because I'm like, I'm going to rebut him. But instead, he just decides to say his piece. He's like, I'm just going to go, but you are oppressed. And he just kind of flutters away. And I don't say that to be homophobic. I say that because there's like a trail of glitter behind him. Like, I'm serious. I don't know where he got that from. But so my sister just like is kind of laughing. I'm just turning to her and I said, I don't have time to be oppressed. I don't. Like, I'm out here trying to do my thing. And I just don't have time to feel like a victim when I'm out here trying to have a business. So I don't understand that mentality. I just don't. So I'm like, there's no time to be a victim. I mean, it does pay well. It does pay well for some people for sure, being a grifter. But that's just not my thing. That's not how I want to live my life. As a Black woman, as a woman, as a conservative, as a Christian, definitely not as a Christian. That's just not how I want to live my life. So, yeah, it was a very interesting story, very interesting day. But again, Chicago is not like Trump territory at all. So the story just didn't make any sense with Jessie Smollett. And there were other fishy things, obviously, that didn't make sense about the story, but people just jumped on like, oh my gosh, there's a lynching. And now I have to find more like throwback quotes about it. But the Rashida Tlaib thing is still up, by the way. Like, that was a picture that I found of Kamala that someone saved, but that tweet from Rashida Tlaib is still up. It's still up. So just lets you know, I mean, people post stuff and they get embarrassed or whatever, sometimes take it down, and some people are like, well, I posted, I'll leave it up there. But it's like, it's false. Like, you know, it's false. It was a hate crime hoax. It's a hate crime hoax. So racism is in such high demand, but there's such little supply that people have to keep making this stuff up. But his trial is this week. So we will also be following that. And I hope he is canned. I don't know what all is a possibility for what will happen with him, but he made that crap up. So you should definitely pay the price. Last thing I would like to mention is that Seth Rogen over the weekend got into a little back and forth exchange. I did post a little bit on my social media about it, but he was trending for a few days because someone was talking about how they got robbed and how LA is just a terrible place. And he's like, no, it's not. Like, I've gotten robbed like plus 15 times, and and it's not bad. So I don't know how you stand up for that, but he did. And he said he's personally never really had such attachment to things, so he doesn't feel he can't empathize, I guess, with these people. And he talked about how someone once like left stuff in their car, and so sometimes you get a nice treat when you leave it behind, when someone leaves something behind. But that's crazy that you could get repeatedly robbed, because sometimes you park on the street and be like, it's just how it is, but it's not a bad place. I'm sure, of course, there's nice places that you live in LA. They're probably gated. But people should not have to live in a community, in any place, anywhere where you know that it is a high possibility that your stuff's going to be broken into. Like, that is obviously a governmental problem with your police and whatnot. And if people can't get their acts together, you need to maybe consider changing who you're voting for. That's what's so amazing, is that people are content with living in a cycle of just incompetence and abuse. and then he made excuses for it. And this weekend there was, I believe, a cop who was who's working with a news crew or something, and he ended up getting shot and died. And so in LA, so in regards to like people who are like breaking into cars and stuff, so that's why he continued to trend after the story, after these tweets, because it is a serious issue. And just to kind of laugh it off, like, it's not a big deal. I don't attach myself to things, so, you know, which someone did break into my car. I think maybe it was 2016. I think it was 2016, and it broke my heart because they stole. I had a work laptop. They took that. I didn't have a ton on there, but I had my personal laptop that I had for some years, and there's stuff on there that I did not have backed up. So my original files for like my books and stuff were on there, original like illustrations, and for my book covers and other stuff like that stuff that it's just gone. That took a lot of time into, and everything that I have pretty much now is like backed up and on clouds and stuff like that. But at the time I didn't have all that stuff, and you could say maybe I should have, and hindsight I guess, but it hurt me to my core. It hurt so bad. It hurt so bad. And it was like the one time, because I never leave my laptop anywhere. It goes where I go pretty much. So I was like on my way to a Republican Christmas party in Mexican town, I guess, and I was running a little late, so I just like hopped out of the car, and I came back and my windows were busted out. So that hurt. So Seth Rogen be like, well, I've never attached myself to stuff. Like, I'm sorry that you have a lot of things that, so you have a plethora of things, but my life was pretty much on that laptop. My life was pretty much on the laptop, and a lot of what I do is I need a laptop. That's so it was just so out of touch. So people were really reaming on him for that perspective. And of course, LA needs a change. California needs a change. They could have had a change with Larry Elder, but they rejected that, and they got Newsom, and then they instituted more lockdowns and whatnot, and they're getting rid of standards for tests and grades and passing and all that, embracing racism in the guise of trying to help the colored people and so on. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And Newsom is saying now, well, we're going to need more police. And I'm like, do you have more police to hire? Because I'm pretty sure your darn mandates are making people not want to work. So we'll see what they can do to turn around. But Democrats obviously are not the solution to these problems. Unless they're like really moderate Democrats that know that you have to lean a little right to get the job done. But in California, it's just usually one liberal Democrat versus another, because it's just so deeply blue. And when things get really, really bad, they pick up and leave, and they move to Austin or something so they can hopefully overwhelm red states. So just get a clue, Seth Rogen, get a clue, Democrats in California, get a clue, Democrats in Chicago with the polar vortexes, because it's obviously not Trump supporters robbing you in the middle of winter. Just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. And FYI, if people didn't know, he paid the people who attacked him, and they were two hulking black guys. So we'll be following that story as well throughout the week, and seeing what other hilarious things emerge. But I just hope people get held accountable. You should not be able to push all this racism stuff, these hate hoaxes, and set the nation into a frenzy, and then not have to pay for it. And then you wasted resources and manpower for your ego. And it really was for his ego. I don't know if it was just to get in the news, to get sympathy, to get, more money out of his contract with Empire or whatnot, but it was just bonkers. And if you believed it, you poor sweet sucker, you poor sweet sucker. And I cannot feel bad for you. It never made sense. You're probably so precious though. You just want to help the blacks. You were so concerned. But it was obviously a lie the whole freaking time. But anyway, that is the show for today. Please visit blacktnews.com. Check out the different content that I have on the website. Please make sure that you guys are sharing different articles that I have. And please consider donating to blacktnews.com. If you like what I do here and you want to help, expand, go ahead, go blacktnews.com/donate. And also check out the different stuff we have on the store, different merchandise that we have. I love the You Are My Money, My Business shirt. I also love the You Are Not That Special. I also love the goat hoodie. that is so comfortable, and it is getting cold outside, and we do have it in different colors, so make sure that you go ahead and check that stuff out on the website. And also please consider buying some books as well. We got Slay Your Fear. We talked about COVID a lot of people still are so bound up in fear. This is my only nonfiction book. It is a faith book, but it's based off For God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind, because people are losing their minds. So I thought I would write a book about it. I also have a historical fiction fantasy series. It's available. I have contemporary fantasy books. I have all kinds of different things for young adults, and also here's my children's chapter books. Thank you. I know some of you have already purchased it and told me that your kids enjoyed it. So if you don't want your kid being the only kid not knowing what Super Kid is, you should go ahead and buy it for your kids, because it is a fun read for sure. I was reading it to my nephew, who's the same age as the title character, and you know what? The premise of the story is the kid actually believes he has superpowers. He does not, and I cannot convince my nephew for the world that this kid does not actually have power. So I'm like, it is super realistic, I guess, because he will not believe me. He will not believe me. He's like, he's a superhero. I'm like, okay, that's what we're going with. So anyway, your kids will enjoy it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.